But there's no kind of us-them thinking that really makes a transcendental object of the differences between in-group and out-group. I mean, the difference between you and your neighbor is not merely skin color, it's not merely language, it's not merely politics, it's not merely that you want his belongings. It's that this difference, this means something for eternity. And so what you have are populations of people who organize their moral identities around their religious affiliation, whether or not they care so much about the theological details. And this leads to conflict when a society is stressed. Over and over again, we see societies breaking down along religious lines. This happened in Ireland, Bosnia. You know, it's not that the Irish were fighting over the doctrine of the transubstantiation, but their identities, their core moral identities, were built around religious affiliation. Then there's the other kind of religious violence, which is explicitly theological, where you literally have people killing other people because they think the creator of the universe wants them to do it, and they think there will be a reward for doing it. And the preeminent example of this is what we see every day on the front page of the paper, that this jihadist violence. So my argument to you really, and my argument in my book, is that unless we call into question the dogma of faith, unless we call into question the idea that beliefs can be sanctified by something other than evidence and argument, we will never successfully undercut the basis for religious violence. Now, I've said many nasty things about religious faith. This is not to say that religion is merely a shell game. This is not to say that all religion is just a tissue of lies and misconceptions and cognitive errors designed to anesthetize us against our fear of death. It is that to some significant degree, but it is more than that. There is no doubt that people have spiritual experiences. I use this word spiritual and mystical in my book, and I use them in scare quotes because, frankly, there are many embarrassing associations with these terms. But there is no doubt that people have extraordinary transformative experiences and can have them deliberately. Every culture has produced people who have gone off into caves for 40 days or 40 years and discovered that a deliberate use of attention, of introspection, through meditation, through prayer, this can really transform the human mind. And the testimony we have on this subject comes to us through our religious traditions. And unfortunately, therefore, it is mingled with all manner of superstition and dogma. And it's not mingled to the same degree in every tradition. And this is also taboo, to notice that our contemplative traditions, our spiritual traditions, are not equally insightful. East and West, for instance. It's a bit of a cultural mystery as to why this is so, but the Eastern tradition has been, the Indian tradition generally, and Buddhism especially, has been so much more sophisticated, so much more empirical in their study of first-person experience, or just in their study of what it is possible for a human being to realize if he or she just pays close attention to the flow of experience. There are analogs in the Western tradition. There have been great Christian and Jewish and Muslim contemplatives. Yes, I mean, in the context of every ideology, there are people making the best of it. But the difference, East and West, in contemplative terms, really is like the difference between Western medicine and Eastern medicine. If you have an appendicitis, you better hope that you're near a Western hospital with a Western-trained surgeon. You don't want to see your acupuncturist. I mean, maybe there are some things that Eastern medicine is better for, but generally speaking, Western medicine is the only medicine we have. And incidentally, if you do get an appendicitis, you might consider this idea that you've been intelligently designed. If ever there were a reductio ad absurdum of intelligent design, it's the appendix. So in the West, we've had an impoverished conception of sanity, really. We've had an impoverished conception of mental health. We think that, if you're walking down the street talking to yourself too much, and we all do it a little, but if you're doing it too much and not censoring yourself in front of other people, you're crazy. But if you talk to yourself all day long silently, if you just know enough to shut up about it, but you're talking to yourself, thinking, from the moment you get out of bed to the moment you fall asleep, that's perfectly normal. That's compatible with perfect sanity. That is not the Eastern, and especially it is not the Buddhist view. I mean, in Eastern schools of meditation, they have discovered that there is an alternative to being lost in thought, moment by moment. In the West, the testimony on this subject is really thin. I mean, in the West, we have been standing on the shoulders of dwarves in contemplative terms. So I just want to briefly sketch for you what I think our contemplative traditions attest to. And this is something that is actually getting a lot of scientific interest at this point. As you probably know, there are meetings between the Dalai Lama and Western neuroscientists. I just came from one in D.C., and this was devoted specifically to the clinical applications of meditation. But there's dialogue between Western scientists generally and contemplatives about how first-person data, first-person experience can be brought into the charmed circle of third-person experiment, and how we can use this to understand the possibilities of human well-being a little bit better. So briefly, the first fruit of this dialogue really is the insight that positive human emotions, positive human traits, are skills. They are trainable. I mean, just as you can learn to play the piano, you can learn to feel compassion for somebody when you otherwise wouldn't. You can learn to feel joy at the success of another person rather than envy. And you can learn this because our brains are really plastic. Our brains are instruments that change based on how they are played. It's really quite magical that this is so, but it certainly seems to be so. Who knows to what degree our experience can change the brain and therefore change the possibilities of future experience. But we know that it does. And therefore, what you think matters. What you feel matters. The kinds of intentions you form toward other people matters. Whether you act ethically matters. And what you pay attention to moment to moment, what you notice matters. And it even just matters for health. We know that stress is so corrosive of physical health now. We know that even if meditation did nothing other than reduce stress, it would be worth looking into. And we know that the brain is intimately linked with it, obviously the autonomic nervous system, but the endocrine system, the immune system. These systems are affected by your conscious emotional life and in turn affect the brain, its physical structure. But there's a deeper message from our contemplative traditions beyond that we can change our minds. The message is that there's something beyond the search for pleasure and pain. There's something beyond joy and sorrow and just the vicissitudes of human experience. And what is beyond is not some distant paradise.